Hello everyone, and welcome to Listen to a Book Every Day. I'm Zoe. Starting today, I will systematically introduce 3 books by Kazuo Inamori: The True Essence of Success, The Way of Work, and Amoeba Management. These 3 books basically cover the most important events in Mr. Inamori's business management, the core concepts of his management philosophy, and practical methodologies that can be applied to management. A business guru like Kazuo Inamori, who is revered by a host of Chinese entrepreneurs such as Jack Ma, certainly has much for us to learn. In today's episode, we will first explore the most important events in his business operations and the core concepts of his management philosophy through his entrepreneurial experience. I met Kazuo Inamori many years ago. At that time, I asked him, "Do you think Chinese entrepreneurs should learn from American entrepreneurs or Japanese entrepreneurs?" He replied, "At the level of corporate management techniques, they should learn from American entrepreneurs. At the ethical level, they should learn from Japanese entrepreneurs." Finally, he added, "In fact, the way should be sought in traditional Chinese philosophy." I then asked him, "What is the Tao?" He answered with 4 words: "Revere heaven and love people." I was immediately in awe, looking up to him like a mountain. I thought to myself, a master is indeed a master. Every word is philosophy, and every silence is thought. Kazuo Inamori is a god-like figure in the entrepreneurial circle. He is known as one of Japan's 4 saints of management. The other 3 are Konosuke Matsushita, founder of Panasonic; Soichiro Honda, founder of Honda Motor; and Akio Morita, founder of Sony. These 4 saints share a common trait: they can elevate their management concepts to a philosophical level and then convey them to their internal employees. To put it in an exaggerated way, this is mindset shaping. In fact, mindset shaping is a neutral term. It can be used by pyramid selling organizations, but it can also unify employees in a company, creating social value and wealth. The 4 saints belong to the latter. They are all masters of positive mindset shaping. For example, Konosuke Matsushita's philosophy is a down-to-earth one, easy to understand. He said, "When it rains, carry an umbrella," meaning that enterprises should adapt to trends and changes and continuously reform. Another example is his bucket theory. Entrepreneurs must always have winter Chinese cabbages, a metaphor for reserves, so that they can survive the capital winter smoothly. This is mainly because Matsushita had little formal education. He was a self-made man who rose from humble beginnings. He lost his father at 7, his mother at 8, and even his neighbors all passed away by the time he was 9. Later, he worked as an apprentice in an electrical shop, and gradually grew into one of Japan's most outstanding entrepreneurs. Therefore, he was good at using such simple philosophical metaphors to shape his employees' mindsets. Kazuo Inamori, however, reached higher level. His management philosophy sounds more profound, but if you want to quickly and systematically understand Inamori's philosophy, his new book, The True Essence of Success, is a good choice. Let me tell you, although this book is titled Success, it is not a success studies book. It is not the kind of nonsense spewed by so-called gurus in airport bookstores, nor is it the kind of rhetoric shouted by real estate agents standing in squares in a highly agitated state. Why aren't you successful? You will definitely succeed. You will succeed sooner or later. In summary, Kazuo Inamori's book is about encouraging business operators and employees to work with goodwill and passion. Summarized into a philosophy, it is revere heaven and love people. This phrase comes from his fellow Kagoshima native Takamori Saigo, a famous figure during Japan's Meiji Restoration. In this context, heaven refers to the laws of all things, and love means benevolence. It means abiding by the laws of nature, having goodwill, and not doing evil. When Kazuo Inamori explained, "Revere heaven and love people" himself, he said that one should do the right thing and put employees' interests first. All the success factors mentioned in this book originate from "Revere heaven and love people," and this idea has always run through Inamori's entrepreneurial experience. Kazuo Inamori is so Reno one main lie because he built 2 Fortune 500 companies in his lifetime, a feat that is probably unprecedented in human and business history. The first is Kyocera, founded in 1959. What were we doing that year? We were building socialism in Dalian iron and steel with the principle of more, faster, better, and more economical. The second company is KDDI, founded in 2000. Around 2010, at the age of 78, Kazuo Inamori came out of retirement again, accepting the urgent task of rescuing Japan Airlines JAL, which had filed for bankruptcy protection. It is difficult enough to succeed in starting one business. Succeeding in 2 is even harder. Succeeding in 2 businesses and turning both into Fortune 500 companies is extremely difficult. What is most impressive, though, is that at an octogenarian age, he was still willing to take the risk of tarnishing his reputation to save a company that had nothing to do with him. The root of Kazuo Inamori's repeated success, against all odds, lies in his unwavering belief that as long as one adheres to revere heaven and love people, success and failure are not the most important things. Of course, he did not realize these for words instinctively at birth. Instead, he summed them up as his life creed. After going through numerous hardships, pains and despair, Kazuo Inamori was born in 1932. He was in poor health as a child and suffered from tuberculosis. He was also not a good student. He frequently failed exams and barely graduated from the Faculty of Engineering at Kagoshima University. Although Kagoshima is beautiful, its university is just average, similar to a provincial key university in China. Even if it were a 211 or 985 institution, it would still not be as prestigious as Peking University or Tsinghua University. At that time, Inamori wanted to be a doctor because of his poor health. He thought that if he became a doctor, he could treat himself and save a lot of money. However, he failed to realize that dream and ended up working at a small, failing company called Matsuke's Industry. At that time, Kazuo Inamori worked very hard and developed a new ceramic technology, which was highly advanced and could be applied in many fields, such as mobile phone semiconductors, precision instruments, and even consumer goods. For example, the ceramic knives that later became popular in China, which many people buy when traveling to Japan. These ceramic knives don't stick to vegetables when cutting and are extremely sharp. Soon, the new ceramic technology developed under Inamori's leadership was commercialized, but problems arose. Inamori believed that the ceramic technology should be applied in a wider range of fields, but his supervisor had a different view. The two could not reach a consensus, and finally parted ways. With the financial support of friends, Kazuo Inamori then started his own business, founding what is now Kyocera. It was after starting this business that he began to realize the importance of revere heaven and love people. At that time, more than at Addison University, graduates were working hard with him, devoting themselves wholeheartedly. However, due to limited funds in the early stage of the business, they had not received a salary increase for several years. These young men became restless and demanded a fixed annual salary increase from Inamori, threatening to resign otherwise. Inamori tried to persuade them repeatedly. "We have just started the business, so we cannot guarantee an annual salary increase. If I promise now but fail to deliver later, that would be breaking my word." But the young men refused to accept this. Inamori locked himself in a small dark room and began to think, what is the purpose of starting a business? At the very beginning, It was naturally to create commercial value with his technology, but now, the company already had many employees. To be Hone Street, the employees' families and personal development were already tied to the enterprise. It was no longer just his own career. It was at that time that Kazuo Inamori proposed Kyocera's management philosophy: strive for the material and spiritual well-being of all employees, and contribute to the progress and development of humanity and society. This is what he later referred to as revere heaven and love people. With this clarity, Inamori negotiated with the striking employees again, talking for 3 whole days and nights. Finally, he said, "I can stake my life on this. I will do my best to safeguard this company. You are not just my employees. You are part of this company. If I started this business only for my own selfish desires, you can kill me without any legal liability." This was a solemn oath from Inamori. As we know, Japan attaches great importance to integrity. When Inamori said, "If I act out of selfish desires, you can kill me," he meant it literally. You may not fully understand Japanese society. On the surface, people are harmonious and polite, bowing 90 degrees at every turn. But society is very harsh on failure, and the cost of making mistakes is extremely high. Simply put, if you fail in starting a business, society will rarely give you another chance. Unlike in China, where you can go back to find a job after a failed startup, this is almost impossible in Japan. Therefore, what seemed like a simple statement from Inamori was actually a pledge of loyalty. The employees chose to trust him. Kazuo Inamori has always been extremely self-disciplined. He never prioritized his own desires over the interests of his employees. It was from that time that he believed in the power of spirit, that when all employees are united and do not prioritize immediate interests, they can create greater value. This was Inamori's first entrepreneurial experience and the initial formation period of his management philosophy, which can be summarized as a strong and sustained will. When he first started his business, Kazuo Inamori painted a vision for his employees. As a boss, this is an essential skill, but with one prerequisite: the boss must truly believe in that future vision and work hard for it. He cannot just talk in vague generalities. When Jack Ma first started his business, he was also good at painting a vision. When he had nothing, he told his partners what they would achieve in the future. Now, the rewards he has given everyone are even bigger and better than the vision he once painted. Kazuo Inamori was the same. When he first started the business, he told his employees that Kyocera would become the best in Kyoto, then the best in Japan, and finally the best in the world. Of course, few people believed him at that time, but he always believed that his efforts would lead to success and kept instilling this belief in his employees while working extremely hard and leading by example. The result is what we see today. In his book, he mentions that he still reads his old notes, which clearly record how he encouraged employees every time, telling them that the future was bright. The notes also record his working hours and achievements each time. To be Hone Street, Kyocera's success today is really the result of continuous hard work day after day. Of course, this strong will is driven by the spirit we mentioned at the beginning: revere heaven and love people. Kazuo Inamori realized that starting a business and working hard was to provide good benefits and development prospects for his employees. He wrote a sentence in this book that captures this idea: the belief that we must succeed no matter what can lead us to success. However, if this will stems from selfish desires, although it may bring temporary success, that success cannot last. Later, the concept of revere heaven and love people was fully reflected in his second entrepreneurial endeavor. When Kyocera, founded by Kazuo Inamori, was at its peak, he did something that most of his peers found incomprehensible. In the late 1980s, Japan's telecommunications industry began to break its monopoly. At that time, NTT, Japan's largest telecommunications company, held a dominant position, and the government allowed private capital to enter the telecommunications sector. Inamori proposed entering the telecommunications industry, but shareholders naturally disagreed, considering it an unfamiliar field that required huge investment. For example, building base stations along railway lines would cost a fortune. At that time, Kazuo Inamori told the board of directors, "I need 150 billion yen to do this," but Kyocera only had 100 billion yen in liquid funds at that time. Moreover, although the telecommunications sector was open, NTT was still a dominant giant with annual sales reaching trillions of yen. Starting a company to compete with NTT Med like a pipe dream. But Inamori thought differently. He noticed that telecommunications fees abroad were much cheaper than in Japan. Breaking the monopoly would be a good thing for the public. Every night before going to bed, he asked himself, "Is it right to challenge NTT?" After thinking about it for a long time, he finally concluded that it aligned with revere heaven and love people when applied to business. This meant having a purely good motive and no selfish desires. For the next 6 months, he repeated this phrase over and over again. Others thought he was obsessed, muttering purely good motive, no selfish desires every day. Then he began to persuade the board of directors. Repeated lie explaining that the value of an enterprise was not just to safeguard shareholders' interests, but to promote social progress and well-being, and to let the public enjoy better services at lower costs. He even told the board, "Even if I have to throw away 100 billion yen, I will do this." The board finally agreed to give him part of the funds, and told him to find a way to get the rest. Kazuo Inamori had relentless determination to achieve his goal. Later, he found Akio Morita, the founder of Sony, who was persuaded by him and offered financial support. The initial stage was extremely difficult. Inamori had to build base stations in remote mountainous areas, like those around Nagoya. Facing numerous obstacles, he locked himself in the small dark room again and thought, should he persist? What if it didn't make money? Because many villages near Nagoya had very few households. Even if base stations were built and phones connected, it might not be profitable. In the end, Kazuo Inamori insisted that all Japanese people should enjoy the convenience of telecommunications, regardless of whether he could make money from it. So he sent many employees to build base stations in the mountains. These workers carried equipment on their shoulders and in their hands, singing as they walked, "How glorious it is to be a telecommunications worker." It was indeed tough. Some employees stayed in the mountains for 2 or 3 years without going home, and when they finally did, they found their wives had remarried to the guy next door, as people say. During this arduous process, Inamori visited the construction sites. Repeated lie. When the company's vehicles could reach a place, he took the Shinkansen. Facing his employees, he encouraged them, "We are engaged in a great cause. The company will not only provide you with good benefits, but also let you contribute to society." With this stubborn perseverance, Kazuo Inamori actually broke into the telecommunications market. Later, he introduced new equipment, which significantly reduced telecommunications fees for Japanese people. The telecommunications company he founded in 1984, originally called D, was renamed KDDI in 2001. KDDI's user base grew rapidly in just a few years, and it soon became a Fortune 500 company. Therefore, there is a core view in the true essence of success, the spirit of altruism, or purely good motive and no selfish desires. This is another expression of revere heaven and love people. Only with this mindset can one engage in a great cause without worrying about whether it is profitable. It was with this philosophy that Kazuo Inamori successfully built two powerful Fortune 500 companies. So how do you instill this altruistic spirit of revere heaven and love people in your employees? First, entrepreneurs themselves must sincerely believe in the power of this spirit and have lofty aspirations to purify their own souls. To be Hone Street. Some Chinese entrepreneurs nowadays are moving too fast in pursuit of fame and wealth, and their souls can't keep up with their bodies. Kazuo Inamori wrote in his book, "If leaders themselves do not believe in a philosophy but borrow it from others, it is worthless." We don't need to think of management philosophy as something profound. It can be simple. Only what you believe from the bottom of your heart can be called a philosophy. The historian Jonathan Spence once said, "Some people firmly believe that they are entrusted with a mission to make everything beautiful, which makes heaven and people praise them. They rarely calculate the consequences." Is this the great suffering of history? He was describing Hong Xiuquan, who thought he was a messenger of God but did evil deeds. However, for an entrepreneur, it is necessary to feel that they are truly entrusted with a great mission. Otherwise, they cannot sustain the development of the enterprise or permeate the management philosophy into every corner of the company. Revere heaven and love people is the core of Inamori's philosophy, and success as he defines it can only be achieved around this core. Next, let's talk about how a person can achieve success under the guidance of revere heaven and love people. In this book, the definition of success is not secular success. It is more appropriate to call it achievement, which refers to the value you create for society, not how much money you earn, how many houses you buy, or how many cars you change. Kazuo Inamori has a famous formula: way of thinking, passion, ability equals result in life and work. What does this mean? These three factors, way of thinking, passion, and ability, do not simply add up. Their combination produces a geometrically multiplicative effect. This is different from Einstein's famous quote. Einstein's quote is very simple: "Genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration." We have been misled by this sentence for many years, thinking that hard work is more important. In fact, Einstein added a postscript, but that 1% of inspiration is sometimes more important than the 99% of perspiration. We usually live in a world of out-of-context quotations. Inamori's formula is clearer. As long as your way of thinking, work, passion, and ability are sufficient, they will produce a geometrically multiplicative result. If we elaborate, Inamori's success formula can be transformed into optimistic vision, pessimistic planning, and cheerful execution. These words are self-explanatory. Envision a bright future, consider potential difficulties, and then execute with enthusiasm. The formula has another layer of meaning. There are few people who have both a correct way of thinking, passion, and ability. Elite people like me are not that easy to find. So Inamori's point is that if one of these three aspects is outstanding enough, one can still achieve great things. For example, in this book, he says that most people have average ability, but if you have enough passion and perseverance, you can still achieve great success. Way of thinking does not refer to how smart you are, but whether you have goodwill. He explains that people who are jealous of others, hate society, or deny a positive life attitude have a negative way of thinking. Therefore, people who love life, treat others sincerely, and are positive have a higher chance of success. How about that? This bowl of chicken soup is not that annoying, is it? Kazuo Inamori practices what he preaches. You all know the story of him rescuing Japan Airlines JAL. In 2010, JAL announced its application for bankruptcy reorganization, and Kazuo Inamori was appointed as the new president. He was 78 years old that year. He could have stayed at home, holding his grandchildren, walking his dog, or dancing in square dances. in his spare time. Moreover, Inamori knew nothing about the aviation industry. He already had two Fortune 500 companies. There was no need for him to wade into this mess and risk tarnishing his reputation. However, less than a year later, the company achieved a profit of 11 billion yuan. That sounds amazing, right? You might think Inamori made a lot of money from this, but he didn't. Since taking over JAL, he has refused any salary, working for free. As he said, "My goal is not to make money, but to prevent JAL from going bankrupt, which is to protect JAL's employees." Today, he won't talk about the specific technical measures he used to improve JAL that will be saved for the next episode when we talk about amoeba management. If I finish everything now, I'll have nothing to say next time. Let's first talk about the spiritual reform. After taking office, he began to shape the mindsets of JAL employees. He put up slogans all over the company, even in the restrooms, such as to make the business plan successful, you must work with single-minded devotion. Strong belief leads to success, a pure, untainted heart leads to success, and work with a noble and pure spirit. Posting slogans alone was not enough. Kazuo Inamori also went to the front lines, talking and meeting with employees and middle managers, even drinking with them, to instill his philosophy. For example, he gathered all JAL flight attendants together and told them passionately, "Only when your service improves can you win the favor of passengers." He repeated, emphasized these ideas. Later, when Inamori took a JAL flight on a business trip, he noticed that the flight attendants' service attitude had indeed changed. Their service was standardized, polite but cold. Now, their smiles and greetings came from the heart. For example, flight attendants would bow and express gratitude when welcoming passengers on board. Inamori said, "This is service from the heart, not just superficial standardized service." Of course, for JAL to be reborn, layoffs were inevitable. Inamori eliminated many unprofitable routes, which directly led to many employees having to leave. He lost sleep for several days over this, because Kyocera and KDDI had never laid off anyone, even in their hardest times. This time, it was really unavoidable, but he still tried his best to minimize the fear of layoffs among employees. At that time, JAL laid off 16,000 employees in total. Only 160 were dismissed compulsorily. 1,500 took voluntary early retirement, and most of the rest were transferred to non-core subsidiaries that were spun off. Even so, Kazuo Inamori publicly apologized to the laid-off employees, expressing his helplessness. So you can see that in the JAL case, we can clearly see how Inamori's success formula was put into practice. In terms of ability, Inamori knew nothing about the aviation industry, but he acted out of altruism, refused a salary, and led by example. In terms of way of thinking, he naturally read the company's employees. With these, plus his unremitting efforts to instill his philosophy in employees, JAL became a united group. After the successful rescue of JAL, many people admired him greatly, building 2 Fortune 500 companies in his lifetime and reviving a company on the verge of bankruptcy. It seemed like he could achieve anything he wanted, never failing. But Kazuo Inamori refuted this view in his book. He said he did achieve what he desired, but the motives behind it and the efforts he put in were the key. He wrote in the book, "From my own experience, achieving what you desire requires conditions. Your inner will must be extremely strong and sustained." Translated into plain language, this means you must have a strong desire and never give up to achieve what you want. And like his theory of revere heaven and love people, this will must be kind, not profit driven. Well, that's the content of the true essence of success. Let's try to summarize it, and you will have a preliminary understanding of Kazuo Inamori's management philosophy. Abiding by the laws of society and nature with reverence that is revere heaven and love people. To achieve success or achievement, you need way of thinking, passion, and ability. If you are lacking in one aspect, you need to make up for it with the others. But you must remember to have a strong will and be full of goodwill. Kazuo Inamori is now over 80 years old and in good health, but did you know that in 1997, he was diagnosed with stomach cancer? When the result was announced, he calmly said, "Oh, it's stomach cancer," and then continued to take the Shinkansen on a business trip to meet clients and have drinks with employees. After the surgery, Mr. Inamori converted to Buddhism, gradually stepped back from daily work, and began to give speeches everywhere to spread his philosophy. He believed that his current work should be to build a spiritual mountain range and let his ideas influence more people. If Kazuo Inamori had only achieved great commercial success and developed a set of business philosophy, he would only be a management guru. But the fact is that he is more than that. He is regarded as a philosopher because of his advocacy of Buddhism and his integration of Buddhist spirits into management. By the way, Inamori's belief in Buddhism was deeply influenced by his father. Although Inamori's family was ordinary and his parents were common people, the simple truths they embodied influenced him deeply. For example, do the right thing and hardships are treasures. These kinds of chicken soup ideas were instilled in him by his father. In his octogenarian years, Kazuo Inamori can still recall the scene when his father took him to a temple as a child. At that time, a monk told him, "Chant Namo Amitabha Buddha every day, and you will achieve success in life." Sure enough, in the decades that followed, Inamori persisted in chanting Namo Amitabha Buddha every day. His favorite book is Yin Zi Lu, the Record of Yin Virtue, written by the Ming Dynasty monk Yuan Liao Fan. This book is not a Buddhist scripture, but a work advocating kindness. Inamori's favorite sentence from it is, "As long as you think good thoughts and do good deeds, your life will move in a good direction." I think the revere heaven and love people advocated by Kazuo Inamori is really worth learning for Chinese entrepreneurs. Many of our enterprises only focus on short-term interests, which leads to problems like toxic milk powder, gutter oil and clenbuterol. Our starting point for everything is to make money, without any concern for society. Therefore, honesty and kindness have become the most precious qualities in China today. Of course, I am not saying that Japanese enterprises are perfect. In fact, there have been cases of moral decay in Japanese business history. But after reflecting on these mistakes, Japanese companies have exercised stricter self-discipline since World War II, and society will not tolerate unethical enterprises that make mistakes. For example, if you get food poisoning after eating at a restaurant, that restaurant will surely go out of business. We live in an era of market economy, which is unprecedentedly fair and free, but it would be very terrible if our society becomes a commodity society. The essence of a commodity society is that everything can be exchanged and bought. Then our morality, love and affection will all become commodities. Kazuo Inamori clearly opposes this and has proposed ethical standards higher than those of secular society. I think Kazuo Inamori's greatest contribution is not building to Fortune 500 companies, nor rescuing Zhao, nor accumulating enviable wealth. His greatest contribution lies in advocating an entrepreneurial spirit, altruism, honesty, and perseverance. Most importantly, he not only put forward these ideas but also practiced them through great undertakings time and time again. Finally, I want to share with you the personal qualities that Kazuo Inamori values most. He said, "Deep and steady character is the first-class quality. Open and heroic spirit is the second-class quality. Intelligence and eloquence are the third-class quality." Well, that's all about Kazuo Inamori's philosophy that I want to share with you today. Next time, I will introduce the way of work. Although this book is about methodologies, it is also deeply influenced by Inamori's spirit. For example, he said, "There are gods in the workplace and I can hear products crying." Of course, this is Inamori teaching us how to work, not a supernatural program. Goodbye.